In the wake of the meat survey, an outcry over what's contained in our meat products. But retailers say it's a storm in a teacup and that cross-contamination is inevitable. But as far as changing labelling, they are awaiting direction from government.
In the UK and EU, as you know, there's 1% DNA threshold to accommodate the unavoidable cross-contamination that you get during the process. But it really depends on what government decides we have to label.
The scientist who conducted the study says his objective was to evaluate compliance of the meat industry to the Labelling Act.
At the moment, they're talking about cross-contamination, be it on the bandsaw or in the mincer, which is a possible and a feasible explanation for it. So, yes, I think there would have been cross-contamination. Our study didn't look whether it's cross-contamination or direct adulteration, because that wasn't the objective.
But consumers feel cheated.
I wish they had labelled it that I'm buying donkey and then as opposed to beef. And I would have had an opportunity as a consumer to either choose to buy it or not to buy it.
Yeah, I'm definitely checking now first, and I'm not sure what I eat always, so yeah, it's not fair towards the community and the public.
And it's also for religious purposes that it's very important, cultural, especially in South Africa. It's one of the fundamental rights to know what are you eating.
Investigations into whether retailers intentionally mislabeled products are underway. The Department of Agriculture has called for strong action against culprits. Nomao Tusolwandle, SABC News, Cape Town.
Staying with that story, the meat scandal has dismayed consumers and government is calling for severe action to be taken against retailers implicated. But as we've heard in the preceding clip, some retailers are calling the issue a storm in a teacup. We now cross live to Pretoria and talk to Mr. Ibrahim Mohammed. He is the acting commissioner of the National Consumer Commission. A very good evening to you, Mr. Mohammed, and thank you for joining us. Are consumers overreacting?
Well, I don't think consumers are overreacting. Consumers have every right to be informed of what they're purchasing. In terms of the Act, there have to be labels attached, and the labels have got to give the correct information. So if I purchase beef, it should be beef and not lamb or donkey or any other form of meat.
In terms of labelling laws in South Africa, where are we at the moment?
Well, the labelling laws in terms of the Consumer Protection Act is quite clear. It says very clearly that if a label is affixed to a product, then it should clearly state what is contained in that product.
Talking about the labelling then, in terms of like the Red Meat Industry Forum says they're going to conduct their own investigation. The so-called guilty retailers are saying they're going to conduct their own investigation. What is your body going to do about this? Are you also going to launch an investigation?
The Minister of Trade and Industry has asked the National Consumer Commission to investigate this matter. This was about 4 to 5 weeks ago when the story first broke about the Stellenbosch and the UWC scientists who had then released their reports.
In terms of the Stellenbosch University also, they were reluctant at first to name and shame the retailers. And then the Red Meat Industry Forum said it was premature to actually name the retailers. What's your stance on that issue? Should they have been named?
For us, it's not a question of whether they should have been named or not. For us, it's an issue as to whether they have correctly labelled their products or not. Now, I believe that the Stellenbosch University test was indeed, a DNA test was conducted. DNA tests are extremely sensitive. I believe that up to 0.001% of traces can be found if a DNA test is performed. Now, that's a very minimal amount. And I think previously on the program, it was mentioned that in certain European countries, I think if more than one or less than 1% of trace is found of another product or a foreign product, then it is regarded as not being present. Now, these retailers who have been mentioned, I think they all claim cross-contamination. Cross-contamination happens in the process where the same machinery is used to cut meat parts and so on. And we have been looking at whether there could be any interventions made at any critical stage of the supply chain or production line process in order to avoid, ameliorate, completely do away with the possibility of contamination. We are looking at whether there are other forms of testing because of the sensitivity of the DNA testing.
Thank you very much. We'll have to leave it there. That was Mr. Ibrahim Mohammed. He's the Acting Commissioner of the National Consumer Commission.